All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring something truly haunting. We're talking about a grim, dark, almost graphic novel-style fable that dives deep into the uncanny psychology of truth, isolation, and corruption. It's called The Silence of the Cave, a Gothic fable of truth and illusion. Together, we're going to unpack a story that challenges the very nature of what we think of as enlightenment, and honestly, the absolute dangers of just walking away from the world.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just look at this chilling fragment from the sage's marginalia. He who has made his peace with the mountain has not conquered the valley, he has merely stopped looking at it. It's unsettling, right? We're so conditioned to think of these mountain retreats as the ultimate goal of spiritual enlightenment, but here we're looking at a much darker reality. The sage's detachment isn't a victory at all, it's really just a surrender completely disguised as wisdom.
And that brings us right into Act 1, the Tomb of False Peace.
So 7, that is the number of years the sage spent locked away, sitting within the stone womb of the earth. I want you to imagine his internal monologue during this time. He's sitting there telling himself, my mind is a still pool. I reflect nothing but eternity. The noise of the world has finally faded out. And the wild part is, he genuinely believes this stillness is completion. He thinks he's hit this higher state of being. But in reality? Actually, scratch that. It's more like a tragedy. He is just alone in the dark.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark visual contrast we have going on. On one side, we've got this frozen mountain silence, an icy, isolated stillness that is completely absent of struggle. But down below, valley chaos. That's where the messy, unfolding human reality continues with all these untended seeds. The sage totally mistook his lack of struggle on the mountain for the presence of peace. He completely ignored the fact that down in the valley, life was chaotic, demanding, and very, very much alive.
And this is what the text calls the first temptation. It's basically the temptation of every teacher who has ever spoken truth into the world. You give your gift, you retreat to the mountain, and you rest like a god on the seventh day, completely forgetting that the work of men is unfinished. The sage had descended, handed over his hard-won philosophy to the valley, and then just climbed right back up. He planted this seed and foolishly believed that a planted seed just naturally takes care of itself without any further tending.
It gets even more fascinating when we dig into the philology here. Look at the classical Latin definition of silentium. It's not just being quiet. It carries this secondary, almost darker sense of cessation, the deliberate laying down of a task. It acts like a psychological disease in this context. The sage's silence wasn't some pure emptiness. It was literally an unfinished task just waiting to haunt him. Because every single task you set aside waits to be picked back up by consequence, if not by your own will.
And this builds right into a crucial Nietzschean concept, ressentiment. It means a festering resentment turned inward, a contempt for the very world one claims to have transcended. The sage's detachment was, for a time, a totally necessary discipline, sure, but isolated way too long, it curdled, it went bad, it became ressentiment. He disguised his own inward weakness and isolation as some sort of high virtue, basically turning his cave into a comfortable tomb instead of a mountain peak.
A man who does not look may believe anything he wishes about what he cannot see. Wow. This is arguably the absolute most dangerous comfort a teacher can permit themselves. Up there on his mountain, the sage told himself the villagers were thriving. He just assumed the philosophical fire he handed them was still burning clean and purposeful, a forge for creation, not a pyre for destruction. Because he didn't bother to look, he got to live comfortably in his own fabricated illusion.
Which naturally leads us to Act 2, the Mirror of Monsters. Because, that comfortable illusion couldn't last forever. On the absolute final night of his 7-year solitude, a dream arrives. And it's this cold, sudden nightmare that did not ask permission to shatter his peace. In the dream, the sage is standing at the mouth of his cave. From the mist, this bright, innocent child approaches him. The kid is holding up a small, silver mirror and smiling this pure, untamed smile. But despite how innocent it looks, an uncanny chill completely grips the sage's heart. He senses something is deeply, deeply wrong.
And this scene forces us to ask a really unsettling philosophical question. Why do followers so often choose to see monsters instead of their own pure truth? Think about it. When you're handed a tool for liberation, why does human nature immediately want to twist it? The distorted mirror here becomes a massive symbol for the absolute fragility of human perception. Keep that in mind as we look at what that child's mirror actually reflected back at him.
So the child raises the glass to look at his own reflection,
but the reflection twists. Out from the silver stares the cruel, mocking grimace of a demon. Its eyes are just full of malice, and its teeth are bared in this sick triumph of deceit. Imagine the sheer psychological horror the sage is feeling in this exact moment. He's literally thinking, "No way, this cannot be. I gave them light. I gave them clarity. Why is this grotesque beast staring back at me from the hands of absolute innocence?"
And this brilliantly illustrates the uncanny symbolism of the whole vision. It's terrifyingly precise when you break it down. The child? That represents the pure, innocent philosophy the sage originally gifted to the valley. The mirror represents the fragile minds of his disciples because human perception is incredibly delicate. And the demon? That represents the corrupted teachings, completely weaponized by his enemies. His beautiful gift of truth had been twisted into a weapon of ruin.
What we are watching here is the tragic anatomy of bondage unfolding step by step. First, pure truth is given to the world. But, left in fearful, unattended hands, that truth begins to bend. That's exactly when enemies of that truth slip in and manipulate the distorted mirror of the followers' minds. Finally, a philosophy that was literally meant for liberation becomes a tool of absolute fear and bondage. They had essentially taught his followers to see a monster in the mirror of their own souls.
And that breaks him, taking us into Act 3, the descent of fire.
This devastating realization totally catapults the sage into a profound internal transformation. That icy, isolated contemplation of the peaceful pool, gone, evaporated. In its place is the wildfire. This fierce, intensely protective love just surges through him, completely melting away those 7 years of ice. He realizes he absolutely cannot sit in a cave while his friends are walking around in darkness. So, he turns his back on the mountain, and he begins a descent, a violent awakening.
So the crucial point is this harsh reality. Truth is a living thing, and when left in the hands of the fearful, it is easily bent. The sage isn't descending to go give people a hug and offer gentle comfort. No, he is going down there to shatter those false mirrors. He completely justifies this violent reclamation because a living truth that has been corrupted into a cage, it sometimes has to be violently shattered for the people trapped inside to truly wake up.
Well, that brings us to the end of our fable. And I want to leave you with a final, pretty provocative thought to consider. If the work of truth is never truly finished, if every single seed you plant requires tending and observation, what comfortable tomb of silence are you still defending? Where in your own life have you maybe mistaken detachment for victory? It's a dark question for sure, but exploring these philosophical depths is exactly how we keep our own fires burning clean. As we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with that. Keep questioning the mirrors around you.